4 wide receivers I would trade for in Dynasty, whether your team sucks, whether it's great, no matter what. You're not going to be able to trade for all 4, and I allow myself 4, or at least I try to keep it as small as possible, but between 3 and 5, because in your league, you might find the guy rostering one of them is just high. They also think the same thing you do about this player, and so they're holding their value at just too high of a line. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The 4 wide receivers I would trade for I would try to trade for at their current value in every Dynasty league I'm in. I've struck out on a few of them, but I'm going to share them with you anyway. Let's see if you can have more luck. Okay, so we're going to start from the bottom up, and the first player I have on this list is actually a write-in. I made a podcast about this entire situation and why I think it's worth investing in. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out. Jeudy, playing for the Denver Broncos. He now has Russell Wilson as his quarterback. There is an interplay between quarterback and wide receiver that most people don't want to admit works both ways. Quarterbacks depend on the wide receivers depend on the quarterbacks, right? You don't need a top 5 Dynasty QB to actually be a top 12 wide receiver. Like, that's actually much more of a 50-50 split. But even in terms of Dynasty opinion on whether they're good or bad, most have good enough QBs. But that's not the situation Jeudy's in anymore. He's been in the league for 2 years. He's averaged, if I can look at it quickly, around 1.7 yards per route run, which is slightly above the positional average. So I think on a per team, per route, per opportunity basis, Jeudy has been performing pretty well in a high volume role, one that Tyler Lockett performed in very well for Russell Wilson, even though he thought of as more of a deep ball thrower. He's accurate all over the field, not just further down the field. Now, Cortland Sutton could easily be subbed in at this point, but both are being held at fairly decent values right now. Jeudy is still currently valued below, according to Keep Trade Cut, where he's actually valued as a rookie. So even though we've seen a slight value increase, technically there's been a value drop since his rookie season. And I honestly think it's worth drawing a line on his career to this point and just saying the real career starts now. He's got top tier QB play, he's experienced, he's demonstrated an ability to be good on the opportunities that he's given at an NFL level of evaluation in terms of yards per route run. And I think Russell Wilson is a major improvement for that offense, so the opportunities that he's going to be getting are just going to be more valuable. And I think as hypey, as popular as it is, I think this year getting in on the Denver Broncos is a pretty good idea. Jeudy, what would I trade him for? Everyone on this list is basically one way of thinking about it. If you have the 104 in Dynasty in a startup, I would trade the 104 for Jeudy or anyone on this list. And if I have to add a plus, like a second or someone's favorite deeper wide receiver or a deeper running back sleeper, I'm definitely interested. The only trades I've come close to are like a first round pick and Rashad Bateman. And I still like Rashad Bateman, so that's too high for me. And people in my league won't accept a first and Tyler Lockett. So someone on Team Old guy that I like, but more for production reasons. So far I've been able to trade for him, but I definitely think he's worth investigating in your league. So next guy on my list is a surprise to me, honestly, but doing an honest evaluation of what I know I can bet on instead of thinking I am the one who's going to view the NFL and know who's going to break out. I don't. I just look at what happens most often, and therefore what we should expect to happen the following year, just so I'm not making any stupid decisions. Last year, Deebo Samuel stood out as a strong, undervalued, with high level of production potential going into 2021. This year, Brandon Aiyuk does. Now, Brandon Aiyuk, like Jeudy, like everyone on this list, is valued in your league. The person rostering them probably is pretty comfortable rostering them. And so that's why you have to offer something significant in order to make them willing to move off it. But Brandon Aiyuk, I think, overall there's a downtrend on his value just because of what happened with Deebo Samuel last year. And I think even his truthers are a little underrating the fact that the offense did find a way to work both. Now, I have concerns about this offense, actually, because if Trey Lance starts, that's a different offense. And a quarterback that succeeds in the way we expect Trey Lance succeeds isn't necessarily the one we want multiple receiving weapons in. But situations change, and also we're pretty bad at predicting what situations are going to be. A rushing quarterback does not mean you can't buy their wide receivers. This happened with Marcus Brown last year, and he hit the value list, and is still someone I'm interested in Dynasty, by the way. but Brandon Aiyuk has yet to hit the top 24 in PPR production, so technically he gets to make this list. Again, he's at that value. The person in your league doesn't want to trade him for free is my best guess. They're not down on him, but if you have the 104 or later, anywhere after the 104, I think it's 104 or later. I think it's a really good idea to send that for Brandon Aiyuk, maybe adding a chaser. The trade value is pretty much the same on all these guys, and I think the upside is there. I think he can hit the top 24. The Brandon Aiyuk was good as rookies here, yeah, and honestly, he was pretty good last year. And so, yeah, trade for him. I haven't sent offers on him yet, but I should. I should, damn it. Okay, the third guy, number 3 guy I have on my trade for in all situations list is DeVonta Smith. I mean, it's like Marcus Brown the second. It's not the type of, and honestly, Brandon Aiyuk. Like, people are kind of cottoned on to the volume wide receiver thing, I think, and so they're a little harder to get a hold of. People are valuing players who get a lot of receptions or a lot of targets. A little bit more than players who are efficient on those targets. But yeah, DeVonta Smith's been decent. He had a great rookie year last year. He had a 61.5% catch rate. He does have that 14.1 ADOT, which is a little unfortunate, that down the field efficiency player. But he ran at a 1.7 yards per route run. His score in my sophomore model, which is what I checked first for last year, was 12. And the average is 10, and so he's decently over it. He had a great rookie season. I think it's a little lost in the sauce because what's going to happen with Jalen Hurts? The Eagles are making trades happen with draft picks. Can Jalen Hurts throw the ball? Yeah, I think he can throw the ball decently enough. And I think there's actually upside in DeVonta Smith. Last year he was a wide receiver, if I can see it quickly, he was wide receiver 30, so technically he only has to be a top 24 wide receiver to make this list. And I definitely think there's upside in that top 24 performance. It wouldn't just be he's a wide receiver 2. I think it would be exciting to see him scoring next year. Now, again, I'm likening him to Marcus Brown. Not that they play similarly, but in terms of what he can do for fantasy. He can earn, and has earned, a pretty decent target share on a powerful offense. Even if you don't think it's a good offense, I actually think it's a pretty good offense. That is improving, and Jalen Hurts can do some decent things, but we just need good. And I think the Eagles can be productive in fantasy, even if you don't want to think of them as a good team. I think DeVonta Smith's going to have a good target share and do pretty well on the targets that are thrown his way. I think he can do more on him than he's currently been doing as well. But yeah, DeVonta Smith, I would trade the exact same value. If I can get him for the 104 or later, if I can add a second to a first round pick and get DeVonta Smith, I would do it for sure. I've sent trade offers on DeVonta Smith. I've managed to get him once. It was a hefty trade. Again, these players don't trade for cheap. I don't assume the players in my leagues are silly or don't know what I know. They know they're giving up a pretty decent player going into his second year, which is the biggest breakout year for all wide receiver positional tiers. But I think DeVonta Smith stands out as someone who's worth it right now. Before the draft, after the draft, all the way up to the season. That's why I like this list. There's no bad time to really trade for him in the year of our football 2022. And so go get DeVonta Smith. Like, what are you waiting for? He's good. This guy at the top of the list, I think he's probably the easiest to trade for, which is why he's at the top of the list. I think he can definitely jump production tier. Last year he was wide receiver 21, so it means he has the potential to at least hit the top 15. I think top 12 is asking for a lot, but I think there's a muted value just based on some of the ancillary information around him. I'm surprised, and the reason I'm mentioning Jeudy for this last guy is Jeudy was a ride-in, doesn't fit my traditional breakout trends, and yet I'm adding him. Amon-Ra St. fits my traditional breakout trends, and yet I have been overlooking him on this list. I've been forgetting to mention that he exists here. Last year, he was wide receiver 21, going into his second career year after hitting a score in my sophomore model that's 13.69. This is a really amazing sophomore score, 1.7 yards per route run again, which is again above the wide receiver positional average for good wide receivers getting volume, by the way. One reason that I think they're decent trade targets, because they're young, because they've been performing well, and some of their situations are a little sketchy. Detroit is a terrible situation. I get that he can't get 10 targets a game like he did throughout the majority of the second half of the season last year, so I get we have to squint at it a little bit. but because he was a top 24 wide receiver in his rookie year and did pretty well on a per attempt basis or a per route basis, again, 1.7 yards per route run, or a score of 13.6 in my sophomore model, which actually hits a little harder when projecting the following season, but ignore that because models suck. He's just a great candidate, especially when there's muted value because he's lower drafted. And what about all those targets and who's his quarterback? I think this is one of those situations that are bad that you can just go, all he needs is Drew Lock. Jerry Jeudy need a little bit more than that, but all he needs is Andy Dalton. All he needs is volume, like he got last year, to actually surprise some with his production, continue this career growth. Is he a little riskier than the other players on the list because of his lack of draft capital? Yeah, but he also produced better than everyone else on this list last year, which I think is a little underrated just because he's underdrafted and his situation isn't ideal. I am good with that. Most breakouts happen into any career, any production tier in their second year. And even if he maintains it, I think people are going to have to take a second look at him and accept that maybe being in a bad situation with lower draft capital is actually okay. Kenny Golladay-like. He never surprised, he never jumped up into the top 12, but it took a minute for everyone to accept that rookie season was actually pretty decent and that he could sustain top 24 production. It's not a great name to mention these days, but remember we were excited about him going to the Giants because he had been good in Detroit before that. And I think Amon-Ra St. can do a similar thing in 2022, and so I think pretty much in all situations the risk is worth the reward. Because of his draft status, Amon-Ra St. has the most risk because if the production isn't there, then his value is more likely to take a steep dive. I'm thinking Cameron Meredith, I'm thinking Tyrell Williams. But the level of upside in a young wide receiver maintaining top 24 performance, I am good with that. I think at least he's good for the points. And that makes it worth the risk for me in pretty much all situations. But hey, let me know what you think. Who are your all situation by wide receivers? Comment below. Hit me up on Twitter at PAHowdy. Check us out on the Dynasty Grind every Wednesday at 9:30 when we go live to all the platforms with guests. Usually Dynasty Outhouse and at Tacit Assassin Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies. I'd really like to know who's on your list or what you think of mine, to be honest with you. Thanks very much, and I will catch you in the next one.